and the offense seemed to have a little bit more of a spark. He was getting the ball down to Brashad Perriman. So now we bring in Elijah Moore, a big deep threat, kind of gadget player. And with Wilson's arm, just all the different angles he can take advantage of, the way he rolls out, I think he's the perfect fit for this offense. It's going to be really exciting to watch him play this year.
Well, you guys are more optimistic than I was expecting, because I know everybody likes Zach Wilson and he's a good player, but I'm kind of tired of the Jets' search for a quarterback. It's been going on for my lifetime and probably a lot of other people's lifetimes as well. I thought they had the guy in Sam Darnold. I was sure of that. And I want to believe in Zach Wilson. I really do. But Michelle, I feel like I've got to wait and see more than anything else at this point.
I actually tend to disagree with you, Ralph. I think, and Ryan and Joe, you guys can jump in here, but Ryan, we'll start with you. I mean, to me, Zach Wilson just feels different. There's a different mystique about him than other previous first-round quarterbacks that the Jets have selected. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, for me, I think it's more about who's making the selection. Like, I trust Joe Douglas. I trust Robert Saleh. I like the Mike LaFleur offense that's coming in. Everyone, you sort of look at Adam Gase and his offense, it was like a wet blanket was over the Jets fan base for the last 2 years. And then you bring in someone where like, okay, what's the best offense that you could really kind of dial up? And it's the 49ers Shanahan offense. And we go out, we get our guy, a big motivational guy. I'm watching all the different Twitter reactions to the phone calls of the players with, Coach Saleh and Douglas, and just the excitement and energy that you get from that is just, it's really encouraging. And I think that's why I have more confidence in Zach Wilson than maybe some previous regimes.
Yeah, I think the wet blanket is even being kind to Adam Gase and what he did to this fan base and this offense. And I think any of these guys are a bit of a crapshoot. It's very hard to draft quarterbacks even in the first round, but I think I feel a lot better about the infrastructure that he's coming into. This is a much better, we hope to be, and it looks to be a much better coaching staff than what Sam Darnold was working with over the past few years. And the supporting talent on offense, particularly even being built out through this draft, should give Wilson a much better chance for success than Darnold had throughout 2018, 2019, and 2020.
And knowing that, Darnold didn't have that ammunition, and clearly a coaching staff that you guys didn't like, and a lot of people didn't like, you could argue, and I think you would, that the Jets kind of ruined Sam Darnold and didn't give him much of a chance. But knowing that, and knowing that he's still 23 years old and, he has some talent there, was there any part of you guys that wanted to see the Jets keep him and not have to go through the rookie growing pains and give him a shot with a better coach and a better team?
I mean, look, I think it is hard it's only been 3 years, and to turn the page from a guy that everyone was understandably so excited about. They gave up 3 picks to move up to get him. They got him right at, in number 3. I do think if you look historically, it is very rare for a quarterback to have the production that Darnold did in his first 3 years and overcome that to become a top-end starting quarterback. I don't doubt he's going to be better in Carolina. There really is nowhere to go but up. The question is his ceiling the guy he was in 2019, which is, okay, like the 20th, 18th best starting quarterback in the league. I think you want to try to find a higher ceiling than that. And maybe Darnold, he is young enough and he could find a way to be a top 7 to 10 quarterback, but you're betting against history when you look at where he is at ranking wise compared to other quarterbacks who started 35 plus games over the past 3 seasons.
And to piggyback off that, not just what we need him to turn into, but where we were in position to draft someone. We held on to a quarterback back in 2007, was it 17, I guess? Whenever we took Jamal Adams, we pass on Deshaun Watson, you pass on Patrick Mahomes, and you're like, okay, no, we're looking ahead to the next quarterback draft class. Well, you're in position to take the quarterback now with Zach Wilson. And as much as you want to hope that Sam Darnold can turn it around, the chances of you having a top 5 pick again next year is really slim. We have an easier schedule. You have more talent. Generally speaking, when you have a new head coach, you're going to have more energy in the room. It's just set up for the Jets to have a much better season than they did last year. So now you're talking about, okay, if you're trading down, you're keeping Sam Darnold, all those picks that you just accumulated, you're going to have to give up potentially 3 first-round picks like the 49ers did just to get the 3rd overall quarterback in the draft. So for me, it was about the looming contract from Sam, the risk of what could he turn out to be, and then just the position of being number 2. If we're sitting at number 10 and you wanted to run it back with Sam, I would have had, no issue. But being at number 2, I think that was what, pulled the trigger for me.
having a rookie quarterback obviously comes with a lot of ups and downs. And these quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson have this instant success. So does that make it more difficult to be patient with Zach Wilson, especially in a market like New York?
A little bit. I think we're in an era now where rookie quarterbacks generally are going to start right out of the gate, although Patrick Mahomes was a bit of an exception to that rule. I think there is a thought that you'd like to see results relatively quickly. I'm not sure anyone is predicting or rightly expecting the Jets to be a playoff team this year. I think people are expecting progress, and they were the 32nd ranked offense in the NFL the past 2 years, so there is nowhere to go but up. But we want to see a team that can score points, is averaging more than one touchdown a game from their offense, and can be competitive. And the last 2 years, the Jets started the season 1-7 and 0-8. You don't want to see the season over by Halloween. Let's start with that and then worry about being a competitive playoff team. Because when you look around, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, all these other guys, Baker Mayfield, have all made the playoffs within their first 3 years of being a starter. And a lot of guys have made it within their first 2 years. So I don't think playoffs year one is a fair expectation. I think at this time next year, hopefully we're talking about that as being what the Jets really should be striving for.
Yeah, I definitely want to just see competent football. Like you look at our wide receiver core the last few years, and now you come in like Zach Wilson just has such a better cast of characters. You have Mims. I like Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Elijah Moore gets added to this team. It's significantly better from that standpoint off the bat. And then this offense just seems like it's more QB friendly than what Gase's system was. It felt like they tried to make Sam Darnold into Peyton Manning, like the statue behind the pocket or in the pocket. And Sam, I always thought he excelled when he kind of rolled out a little bit, was able to create a little bit of, maybe controlled chaos. And you never got to see that. So I'm looking forward to it. And like Joe said, just give me some competent football. I don't want the season over by week 2. I want to be going into, November, December and be like, we at least have an outside shot of getting in the playoffs.
Switching gears a little bit, Ryan, I'm going to stick with you. What was your reaction to the Jets trading up to grab Elijah Vera Tucker?
I loved it. I was a big fan of Elijah Vera Tucker. He was one of the guys I wanted to hopefully fall to 23, but I knew it was probably on the, the outside. When you look at what the Bears gave up to go up and get Justin Fields, they gave up a first-round pick. The Jets only gave up 2 third-round picks. And as much as it kind of sucked to only have 1 pick on day 2, to go up, get the starting left guard, a lot of Jet fans wanted Joe Thuney in free agency. Obviously, him going to Kansas City sort of left the Jets high and dry on the interior of that offensive line. So you go out, you get your, a great quarterback. You go out, or hopefully a great quarterback. You go out, you get the top guard in the country. I think that's exactly how the Jets should have handled it, and I'm happy with the pick.
Yeah, you can't complain about doing everything in your power to set your rookie quarterback up to succeed. In 2 drafts, Joe Douglas has taken as many first-round offensive linemen as every other Jet GM from 2000 to 2019. Kind of an insane stat. And both of those linemen came in 1 draft with Nick Mangold and DeBrickashaw Ferguson. It just shows how negligent they've been to build and protect their quarterback. The draft they took Sam Darnold in, they didn't draft an offensive lineman for the rest of that draft. They didn't draft an offensive lineman the year after. Eventually, you have to start leaning in on offense in the early rounds, particularly offensive line. And to have Becton and Vera Tucker, a guy who I think by most people's rankings is about a top 10 player in this class on the left side for hopefully the next decade or so, that gives Wilson that much better of a chance for success. And if he succeeds, then this team has an exponentially higher chance of actually succeeding in the coming years.
And I love that Joe Douglas was bold about it too. A lot of GMs will just sit there and play the board and wait for a guy to come to them, but he saw a guy that he wanted and he needed, and he knew he was not going to go into next season returning the same 5 starters on the offensive line that he had last year, because they were awful last year, and maybe they could be a little better, but their ceiling wasn't going to be that high. He knew he had to do something. There was a drop off in guards after Elijah Vera Tucker, so he spent the last year and a half accumulating as many picks as he could. So he used them. Rather than use those 2 third-round picks on players that might have helped, he packaged them for a guy who could be a great guard and could, power their running offense as well as block for their rookie quarterback. So I think it was a great move. I hate when GMs just sit there. I like when they move around and think a little bit ahead.
Joe, we've seen the Santana Moss comparisons. How do you see Elijah Moore fitting to this new look Jets offense?
I think he's a guy who will predominantly play in the slot, but I think does have the athleticism to move all over the formation. One of those guys who will be in motion a lot pre-snap, which this new offense is going to have, but also has that extra gear, run after the catch, punt return style ability that Moss had way back in the day. And it's exciting to hear those comparisons again, because they do make sense when you watch the two of them play. And for a few years there, Moss brought a different level of big playability that this offense just has not consistently had in the past 15 years or so since then. So continued investment on making Zach Wilson's life easier. We saw last season how easily it is for receivers to drop and the quarterback has no one to throw to. The Jets are actually a little deep at receiver now and have some big playability. So more another guy that good value. He was a guy that you saw in some places being mocked to the Jets at 23 and they were able to just stay put at 34 and get him, and will make, again, Zach Wilson's life that much easier.
Yeah, I love the Santana Moss comparison. The other player that I thought maybe not quite as great a comparison, but I thought the Jets would have been in on Curtis Samuel from the Panthers just because he's that kind of gadget type player. And that's sort of what I see in Elijah Moore. And I like that. I think that's something that the Jets offense needed. He's also pretty fast. So a deep ball that Zach Wilson can get the stretch that field out. Maybe that opens up some of that intermediate passing opportunities for maybe like a Chris Herndon or some of our screen passes and whatnot. So I like the pick. I think you're surrounding Zach Wilson with as much talent as possible. And like Joe said before, that second pick is so valuable it's not just a quarterback. It's the number 2 overall quarterback. So to give him as much support as possible, I would be okay punting on, every defensive position if it means just making sure this quarterback works out.
They certainly learned their lesson from Sam Darnold, surrounded him with as many weapons and blockers as they possibly could. And the Elijah Moore pick, scouts loved him. I heard a ton about him before the draft. Never once did I hear somebody say they thought he would slip out of the first round. And, I think looking back on it, I know the Giants took a receiver, Kadarius Toney, at 20. I might have taken Elijah Moore ahead of him. And I'm telling you, the Jets were absolutely stunned when they got to the end of that first round and saw him still sitting on their board.
So transitioning to the coaching situation, obviously Adam Gase no longer with the Jets, Robert Saleh, the new head coach. Ryan, we'll start with you. How do you feel watching Saleh? You mentioned it earlier, just making those phone calls to the picks.
It feels very much like a Rex Ryan without the brashness, I think. You look at Robert Saleh and he's got command of an entire room. He's just a presence when he walks in, and the energy, just every person that he talks to, it feels like I want to run through a brick wall for this guy. And it's just like, it's refreshing as a Jet fan, because the last 2 years, like I said, it was like a wet blanket on this franchise, and you knew you weren't going anywhere. You're just going to be spinning your tires. This feels like a new regime. It feels like you got your GM on a 5-year contract. You got your head coach on a 5-year contract. You got this new rookie quarterback in Zach Wilson on a 5-year contract. They're all moving in the same direction. So I absolutely love it. I think it was a great hire.
I think they should make a Netflix show of Robert Saleh making calls, welcoming players to the NFL. That's how good these videos have been. And look, you're hearing 2 Jet fans who are notoriously negative and pessimistic, genuinely very optimistic and excited. And I think Saleh contributes to that a lot with the energy that he has brought to the franchise already before the season has already started. And seeing these calls in action and seeing him and Douglas work together with what seems to be a very clear shared vision is a breath of fresh air. And I do think it is pragmatic to be optimistic about this team for the first time in a while.
What's interesting about Robert Saleh is, this stuff about his energy and his presence and leadership and all that. It's almost become like a cliche about how much, his players love him and, he just seems to command the room and all that. But it's a cliche because you hear it over and over again from literally everybody he comes in contact with: scouts who've worked with him, coaches who've worked with him, players that have played for him. The new guys who meet him seem to fall in love with him right away. And of course, the contrast in that, in hindsight, looking back a couple of years before, you did not, forget the first press conference, which was not good, but you just never got that same reaction from people who met Adam Gase. I'd ask them, what do you guys think of him? What do you think of the new coach? And you'd get kind of a muted response. They were hopeful and they thought he was smart, but weren't impressed. Everybody's impressed with Robert Saleh, and I think that's a good thing.
All right, Joe, and then Ryan, and then Ralph. Last question. What overall grade do you give the Jets for this draft?
Hard to give that instant grade, but I'm in that B+, A- range. I have been dying for this team to invest in offense seriously for a long time, and their first 4 picks were on offense. And excited about the new quarterback, excited about protecting the quarterback. I don't want to go full all in and say A+, but I think this could be one of their best drafts in a long time. And to go offense with the first 4 picks, that in itself gets me to an A-.
Yeah, I think I fall right there with Joe. I would have liked maybe to go a different direction than running back in the 4th round, just because I think the value at other positions might have been a little higher. But I think investing picks on offense the way we have never done. I think we looked it up. The last time the Jets had 4 offensive picks in a row was 1983. So to be able to get some offense in here, it has me excited. You get the quarterback, you protect the quarterback, you get him a weapon both in the backfield and out in the slot. I think it's a home run. We'll see how the rest of this graph grades out, but I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I gave them a B+, and I loved the strategy. You can't go wrong with surround your quarterback with weapons and blockers and talent. And, again, they learned that lesson from, the way they basically abandoned Sam Darnold. They're not going to do the same with Zach Wilson. I only knocked it down below an A because to me, one of the biggest needs going in was cornerback. And I cannot believe that they're headed towards starting Bless Austin and Bryce Hall again in that defensive backfield. I wanted them to address it earlier. They kind of addressed it late. Some guys who could help, maybe a bit more projects, but they didn't get to it early enough for me, and I think that's going to hurt them. But the offensive stuff, I can't argue with any of those first 4 picks. I think Joe Douglas did a terrific job.
One thing to know before I let you guys go is there's a big difference between an A- and a B+, and you know that if you were an A student versus a B student. Just throwing that out there.
Sorry. Can't help you with that.
No comment.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. We really appreciate it and hope to connect with you guys soon.
Wow, Michelle, you were an A student. Who knew?
Oh, I mean, I don't want to claim the A student. My parents are probably watching this like, that's not true. I don't know.
Right. Sure she was. Right. I believe that.
All right, so now we welcome in Danny Heifetz, staff writer for The Ringer and co-host of The Ringer Fantasy Football Show, and Bobby Skinner, co-host of Talkin Giants for Jomboy Media. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Danny, we're going to just get right into it. Start with you. Would you rather have the Giants draft Devontae Smith or make that trade with the Bears?
Wow. You know what? The reality is it wasn't on the table, so the fact that they did the trade back since Smith wasn't there makes me really happy. I kind of got to go with Smith, to be honest with you. I think it's pretty annoying that the Eagles are going to have Devontae Smith, and there's always going to, if he has a great career, there's always going to be that what if the Giants hadn't really leaked their interest in it, so that's really upsetting. But I do think they definitely made the best of the situation.
Bobby, your thoughts?
I actually wasn't hoping for Devontae Smith in that spot. I was hoping Rashawn Slater was right there. Even Elijah Vera Tucker was a guy I like. And, right now this Giants offensive line is a huge question mark. You have Shane Lemieux, who struggled mightily in pass pro. Will Hernandez, it's hard to gauge how they feel about him. He hasn't lived up to his draft spot, but he is an above-average player. And then Matt Parrott's a big question mark, even though he's a very, athletic tackle who has the trait. So I was in the boat of get offensive line, but I like the trade back. You can, having that extra first round next year is huge. And then average, a 4th round next year, and then the 5th they use up the trade for Aaron Williams. So I love the trade back. We leave the draft with no offensive lineman. Everyone wanted them going mid-round offensive line, and there's definitely some names, but mid-round offensive lineman is what they already have. So I wasn't mad that they didn't get mid-round, but in that spot, if they would have stayed there, I would have said Slater. But I'm all in on the trade down.
It's really interesting. Once Devonta Smith was taken by the Eagles, my first thought was, well, if the Eagles gave up a 3rd rounder to move up, couldn't the Giants have done that? You got to believe that the Cowboys had offered that, same pick to the Giants, so same kind of deal. I mean, if they could get a 3rd round pick for them, maybe 3rd round and a 5th round next year or something. But Dave Gettleman already had that trade with the Bears ready to go. He knew if Devonta Smith was gone and the other guys they liked were off the board, this is what he was going to do. And I think, once that 1st round pick was in his head, there was no reason for him to try and move up for Devonta Smith. I think he had convinced himself that the next scenario, dropping down, getting Kadarius Toney, getting those 3 picks was going to be just as good. So why give up a pick? Devonta Smith's probably going to be a better player than Kadarius Toney, I would think. But boy, that first rounder next year is such a high value. I can see why he didn't pass it up.
Yeah, the king of never trading down, right?
Yeah, now he's Trader Dave.
So which was worse? Danny, we'll start with you. Eagles losing on purpose to the Washington football team in week 17 of last season, or trading up with the Cowboys to draft Smith?
Oh, the week 17 thing. It's not even close. That was awful. It was like a giant, it was just a crushing in the moment because it was like the most sticking it to Giants fans I've ever seen. It was almost like performance art. I kind of respect it. I also think more teams are going to do that, honestly, in the future. Now that the Eagles seem to have squeezed an extra first rounder out of that by trading back, I think more teams are going to do that. But yeah, that was awful to watch in real time. It was excruciating.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely that because, one, I wanted Rashawn Slater over Devontae Smith. But what was so bothersome about that game was that they had the answer of like, oh, we shouldn't have went 6-10. It's like, we know, but we're here and we want to make the playoffs so badly. So it's like, yes, we should have won more games, but we're here on Sunday Night Football just watching our pipe dream go through Nate Sudfield's hands.
This will make you feel better, but the Giants actually got a little bit of a measure of revenge on the Eagles because when they moved up in the third round to get Central Florida cornerback Aaron Robinson, that was a guy the Eagles wanted. And I think there's actually a video of them not really reacting well to that. So, the game, that situation, that week 17 was so bad. It's going to be a long time before Giants fans, forgive something like that. But, even though the Eagles messed up the Giants' plans in the first round this time around, the Giants they were determined to have that explosive receiver to add to the arsenal of Daniel Jones. So what did you guys think of Kadarius Toney?
Yeah, I'll go. It's very interesting because we knew they would add wide receiver, but you saw guys like Terrace Marshall Jr., 6'3", nice speed. De'Ami Brown's a guy I like more. And that would kind of fit the prototypical Jason Garrett offense, outside receiver who can go up and make plays. And, I've been a harsh critic of Jason Garrett, but with good players, he's done good in the past. And that was like, okay, get, Kenny Golladay, John Ross, Kyle Rudolph fits more that role. Where Kadarius Toney, I really do signals a shift of how the Giants are going to use this offense. Because you don't just line up a Kadarius Toney and let him play. You got to use him in different ways. You put him in motion a ton. So I do think this signals more of Joe Judge's fingerprints. Some of the younger guys they've brought in, I know Russ Callaway is a popular name because he was tied to Joe Brady at LSU, that they really are trying to move this offense more than just, hey, we want our players to be better than your players.
There's two things I think about it. The first is that as exciting as a player he is, it's the kind of player that do you know what to do with him? Because it's really versatile. It's great after the catch. But look, Jason Garrett coached against the Giants for like a decade. What did you hear from Cowboys fans? He doesn't really seem to know how to use these really exciting players the Cowboys have. Vanilla seems to be intrinsic with Jason Garrett's entire coaching style. Until I see some more exotic, creative stuff, I am not 100% convinced they're going to have a whole vision for how to use him. And then second, to Bobby's point, I think it's really important. I think he touched on something huge, which is the offensive line's in rough shape. And it's not like the Giants have won Super Bowls in the past without dominating in the trenches on both sides of the ball. The reality is the Giants rated dead last in Pro Football Focus grades for offensive line for pass protection. Dead last. So I don't know if it matters if Kadarius Toney is getting open downfield if Daniel Jones is getting strip sacked again.
Danny, with Toney, Kenny Golladay, John Ross, what are your expectations for Daniel Jones in 2021?
Low, to be honest with you. I wish I had a different answer, but I feel that a quarterback needs to be like a basketball player. LeBron James knows where all 9 players are on the court. He could do it with his eyes closed. You just need to know where people are around you. Quarterbacks need to have that too. They need to know when to get rid of the ball. Daniel Jones has not really demonstrated that he has the sense of when to release the ball in the pocket. I'm very concerned that might not be a learnable skill, at least not on the fly. We all know that this is the make or break year for him. But I don't know if all this scaffolding they've built around him means that he's the structure to build around.
For me, I know everyone, we're talking offensive line, and I definitely wanted to add an offensive line because it's better to have it. But, that was very low on my blame list for the Giants offense because you saw in 2019 with Pat Shurmur that now Jones made mistakes, but he's a rookie. But he had 24 touchdowns, was on pace. You look at just the stats. He had very similar stats to Justin Herbert's rookie year. And even, win-loss wise, it's like losing some games at the end, where the defense screwed up. They had very similar rookie seasons. So I think Kenny Galladay is a huge addition because he is that deep ball contested passer, and Jones, was the top rated deep passer. So it ties with him and Jason Garrett. Does Garrett let him go vertical instead of that horizontal offense where it was a lot of pre-snap, knowing where you're going, quick throws, to where that's not what Daniel Jones was, and that's not what he was at Duke. He is a read from deep to short, and they had him reading from right to left and the left to right. So do they address that and fix it? So if Garrett really plays to his strength, I have, not crazy expectations, but high expectations. And in year 3, they have to be high too.
I got to admit, I don't know what to make of Daniel Jones. I think I was excited about him his first year. I thought there was some really good flashes of ability there. Last year was so bad, though. And I think back to the second year of Eli Manning, he had some great games. Obviously, he was up and down too much, but he was really showing you why he had been a top pick. Even Sam Darnold in his second year had started to show some ability and flashes in games or halves where you thought, okay, I think he's got it. I didn't really see much of that out of Daniel Jones last year. And I'd want to give him a little bit of a pass because that line was awful. The weapons were not good. He threw some pretty good passes to Evan Ingram that went right through his hands. Obviously, Saquon Barkley wasn't there. So there's a chance it was just a disastrous situation for him. This year, it's going to tell the story. The weapons, they're loaded. And I don't even want to hear about the offensive line. If it's just somewhere between mediocre and terrible, find a way to get rid of the ball. There's plenty of guys that can catch it, do something. But I don't know. My expectations, I really kind of shrugged my shoulders about what I think he's going to be this year.
He's got to figure out a way to pair that 2019 aggressiveness with the second half of 2020, where he had one interception. And that, like you mentioned, Ralph, was through Evan Ingram's hands to a Dallas Cowboy safety. So to pair those two together, to have that aggressiveness, but also, not be reckless. And the game before that, to end the first half of the season was that Tampa game, which I think we all agree was his worst game from, just the interceptions were, I think, the 2 worst interceptions of his entire career. And they were on Monday Night Football in a winnable game. But also, I will point out, in that game was a game where Jason Garrett was letting him attack downfield, and they almost won that game with as bad as he played because that is his style. So let him do it. There'll be some games where he looks bad, but let him play through those and let's see his strengths and not be playing afraid of his weaknesses. Because if we can't play to his strengths in year 3, then it'll be time to move on.
Great point. Let's go back to the draft for a second. Giants traded down again from 42 to 50. Danny, we'll start with you. Do you feel the Giants got a steal with Azeez Ojulari?
Oh my God, yeah. What's really weird about this draft is they could have taken Ojulari in the first round and Tony in the second. I don't think anyone would bat an eyelash. I think that's really weird. I don't know how many times that happens. It's a great pick. I guess there's concerns with his knee. I guess some teams took him off his board. So that's the question. That's one of the things where they say you have to wait 3 years to grade a draft. I think how many games he actually plays in is going to be part of the evaluation since the knee was a known quantity. And so, but my God, he led the SEC in sacks last season, and we got him in the second round. That's unbelievable. And they traded back to get it. They picked up an extra pick. I think it's a fantastic thing. They get 2 Georgia edge rushes with Lorenzo Carter. I think it's great.
Yeah, the Ojulari pick, definitely surprising, like you said, that he fell to 50. He was one of those guys that I was worried they were going to take in the first round because he's good. He fits the scheme perfectly. Like, he's the best scheme fit out of the edge because he does it all. But he did struggle with some of the better offensive linemen that he faced. So, but he's only 20 years old, and I actually didn't know that until yesterday. I do spend 4 months researching, and it's like you learn stuff on the fly. So I didn't realize he's 20 years old. So he's got stuff to work with. So at pick 50, I was thrilled. Now, if they would have picked him at pick 20, I would have not been as happy. But pick 50, like what, you got your perfect scheme fit, who's young and has speed off the edge.
All right, Bobby, leading into the draft, what was your confidence level in Dave Gettleman, and what is it now?
Dave Gettleman is either people love him or they hate him. I enjoy at his 2020 with Joe Judge. My confidence levels, I guess, I like a 6.5 because you did see him and Joe Judge have a good working relationship. You saw free agency go well. And the team is kind of filling out a little bit 4 years in. Now the wins haven't came yet, but the team is starting to fill out a little bit. And you viewed it as like, hey, there's a lot of good players that they can take. And a talking point was like, hey, they can't really screw this up. Now they could have screwed it up. But I like the Kadarius Toney pick. It's a gutsy pick, which I like about this regime. So it's middle. But if they don't win games this year, he knows that he's done.
Danny?
I've always felt that Dave Gettleman's kind of like Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development. It's like he's a good scout, but he seems to have no idea what things cost. And it's just, Leonard Williams, great player. $22 million a year? Yeah, sure. Why not? Like, it just, there's always seems to be a value question of the moves he's making for generally accepted, like, good players. So my confidence is pretty low coming into this. But now it's kind of, with all these trade backs, I'm back in. Like, it reminds me of someone who didn't really drink in college, and then they graduate, and then they start going out. It's like he discovered the trade backs, and now he can't stop doing it. So I love it. Like, the Giants have, a first, a third, and a fourth, or two of those in each round, the 2022 draft. That's great. So I'm a lot more excited about it. But at the end of the day, John Mara was really clear. It's like they have to win this season. If they don't make the playoffs, I don't know if Dave will be around unless Daniel Jones makes huge strides this season.
Yeah, he probably won't be. I think Dave knew that this season really is his last chance to prove that his plan has worked. And, I'm sure you guys know, Michelle, I've probably been one of the more vocal supporters, I guess, of Dave Gettleman. Not that I believe in everything he's done, but I think his first year with the Giants was so bad. And after that, the Giants wiped the slate clean and said, we're not going to try to win and rebuild at the same time. This is a mess, just rebuild. And from that point, there was kind of a slow, steady climb. The draft picks got a little better. Free agency starting last year got much better. I think a lot of times fans cannot, and a lot of media too, cannot forget those early mistakes. And they have just weighed down Dave Gettleman, and plus his folksy talk about, analytics and everything else. He just doesn't come off as the modern, young, obviously he's not, general manager. But I think his plan has kind of worked, probably too slow, much slower than I think a lot of people wanted, but he was slowly getting the build there. But yeah, this is it. I mean, forget, even if you love this draft and love free agency and love everything else, if they're 6-11 or 7-10 next year, he has to be gone. They can't wait another year to finally win and return to the playoffs.
All right, Ralph. Well, since we've already established, you and me, that there is a difference between A-, B+, et cetera, why don't you set the benchmark for this conversation? What overall grade do you give the Giants in this draft?
Oh, I gave them an A-. I mean, I think part of it is, there was a joke made by Joe Judge that Dave Gettleman must have a concussion with all the trades he's been making. I think I've got a little bit of a concussion from watching him in this draft. It's just been fun to see him do the modern thing and trade down and accumulate picks, trade up when he sees a player that he likes. I think it's all great. I love the value of Azeez Ojulari. 2 weeks earlier, I might have picked him to be the Giants pick at 11. That's how much people thought of him as a prospect. I think the first 4 picks were fantastic. The knock to me is that he didn't address the offensive line, which is just a huge hole. He thinks he's right about the guys that he has. And this is why I gave him an A-, just because I thought he needed more. He thinks he's right. We're about to find out. I'm not so sure he is.
Danny?
I think A- is a good grade. I think that the trade back gets an A. I think the Toney pick gets like a B- for value. But here's the thing. The reality is that the highlight clip for Kadarius Toney is so good that most fans aren't going to care until he, at least for the summer, no one's going to be upset with the pick. But my inclination is to what Bobby said. I think that, I think that offensive line, and there's a chance they look back and the fact they passed on Slater from Northwestern could be really bad. But I think that overall getting Ojulari, they needed the pass rusher. The Giants had none of the Giants edge rushers have 10 career sacks. They had the least experienced edge rushing group in the league. Getting Ojulari in the second round, the trade backs, looking a lot of times the GM's on a hot seat, they trade up, investing in now. And if doesn't work out, not my problem. The fact that he's trading back and accumulating future assets when he might not even be there to do it is a stewardship of the franchise that I really appreciate.
I'll say overall, A, because you get those picks, and we have 10 picks next year, and they had 10 picks in 2020, but it's like 4 of those were in the 7th round. Like, They have 2 firsts, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. Those are like important picks. Player wise, just grading the players, I will go B+ because you know what? You didn't add an offensive line and offensive lineman, and you have guys that you like, but asking those 3, Shane Lemieux, Matt Peart, and Will Hernandez to all make a jump is risky. Now I know they have veteran depth behind them. I feel very good about Andrew Thomas and Nick Gates. And then Azeez Ojulari, I like that pick. And, Danny, you said they are very weak at that edge spot, so he walks in and becomes their best player right away probably. Ellerson Smith is – I don't know if I love that one or hate it because he has awesome pass rush ability, but he's really bad versus the run. Aaron Robinson is a good player, but they did draft him at a spot where they have another good player in Darnay Holmes. So player-wise, I'll say a B+ because you got so much value in the trades. But if you look at last year's crop of players versus this year's, I would take last year's.
Still not a bad average. Bobby, Danny, thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time and your insight. We really appreciate it. That's it for this live episode of The Tailgate. For Ralph Vacchiano, I'm Michelle Margaux, and we'll see you next time.